Hi, boys and girls. Welcome back to Story Time. I'm so glad you can join us today. So, this week we were learning about the water cycle, how the rain is made in the clouds, and how it comes down onto the earth, and then how it goes back up to the clouds again. And that's called the hydrological cycle or the water cycle. So, we're going to read a story about the Great Big Water Cycle Adventure. So let's dive in. Let's see. The Great Big Water Cycle Adventure. Written by Kay Barnham. Did you know that the same water has been falling as raindrops for billions of years? Did you know that? So the water that's raining out of the sky is the same water that's been raining over and over for billions of years. It travels around our planet again and again. The journey it takes is called the water cycle. Are you ready to dive into the Great Big Water Cycle story? I know I am. Look, they're outside playing in the rain. Who likes to play in the rain? It's fun, right? You get to wear your rain boots. You get to splash in the puddles. All right, let's see how the water cycle works. The sun is a very important part of the water cycle. So there's Mr. Sun. He's super important about the water cycle. When the hot sun shines on our planet, the water in the oceans and the seas become warmer. As this happens, the water changes from liquid into gas called vapor. So, when the sun gets super hot, it changes the water into vapor. And the vapor then, what does the vapor do next? So see, they're canoeing, and the water in the ocean, when it gets hot, it's going to change into vapor, and it's going to go into the air, but you can't see it. What's going to happen with the vapor? Let's find out. The water vapor rises, so it goes up, 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 up. The arrows, it goes up, rises because it is warm. As the vapor travels higher, it cools and changes from an invisible gas into tiny droplets of water and ice. So as it gets all the way up to the sky is nice and cool up there. So then it starts to change from a vapor, which is a gas, to droplets, to little tiny water droplets and ice droplets. When the tiny droplets join together, like that, the cloud forms. Wow. So when the vapor rises and it changes into droplets of water and ice, it turns into a cloud. So that's what the clouds are in the sky. They're droplets of water and ice. As more and more droplets stick to each other, they grow bigger and bigger. The droplets in the clouds become too big and heavy to stay in the air. The water droplets then fall back to earth as rain, hail, sleet, or snow. So, when the clouds get too heavy because so many water droplets have vaporized and gone up and turned back into water and ice droplets, then the clouds are too heavy, so they have to let some of the water out, and they drop down to the earth as rain, hail, snow, or sleet. See? She has a rain jacket, her raincoat on, and her umbrella, and then there's some snowflakes over here. So depending on the season, we will see different kinds of precipitation, which is another fancy word for rain. When water lands on our planet, its never-ending journey continues. Where does it go next? This depends on where the water falls. So let's see. Here's some rain. Can you guys see that? There's some rain coming down. And let's see, where does it fall? If the water falls into the oceans and seas, the water cycle starts all over again. So if the rain comes into the oceans and seas, then when it gets hot again, it goes back up to the clouds, and then it's going to rain back down again. But what about if it lands on Earth? If water falls on land, some of it runs over the surfaces and trickles into streams. Small streams join larger streams. These flow into rivers. Some rivers and streams tumble and gush down mountains as waterfalls. This water travels back to the sea. So, the water always ends up going back to the sea. So if it falls on land, these are streams, and this is a river and creek, right? So the water, if it falls on land, it ends up traveling back to one of these bodies of water, and they all end up going back to the sea. See the waterfall? And then animals can use this water to drink, and to get fish and food, right? And to live. Some water falls or runs into ponds, lakes, or reservoirs. This water may flow onward to the sea. The sun may turn it into vapor again, or the water may stay put for many years. When summers are long and hot, more water turns into vapor. Lakes and rivers disappear. So the hotter the summers are, sometimes the water starts to dry up. See, there's water here. And there was water here where the duck was. But as it gets hotter and hotter, the vapor becomes more and more, which takes away from the water because the water turns into vapor, into the gas, and goes up to the clouds. Water will also fall into plants and trees. It may trickle to the ground and get soaked up in the plant roots. This helps plants grow. Water droplets on leaves are warmed by the sun and turn back into vapor. Oh, so the water is constantly cycling. Even when it's on the leaves, it turns back into vapors and goes back up into the clouds. So our earth is constantly recycling the water. Some water falls on land and seeps down deep down underground. It then fills the cracks and gaps between soil, sand, and rock. This groundwater moves slowly. It takes a long time to return to the sea. So see, the water from the little puddle is seeping into the ground, and eventually it's going to go back to the sea. But for right now, it just stays in the ground and travels slowly. Other times, water falls as snow. When it lands on the mountaintops and in cold places, it does not melt at once. It may take a very long time to return to the sea. Some of the world's water has been frozen for thousands of years. It is trapped in glaciers, which are slow-moving rivers of ice. So you see the glaciers? One thing about our Earth is that the glaciers are melting. And it's really important that the glaciers are there so that the Earth can stay cool. Because we don't want the Earth to be too hot, because then all of the water will evaporate into the air. And if it doesn't cool, then it can't come back down. The water cycle does not always run smoothly. When there is too much rain, the water builds up too fast and there are floods. And a flood is when the water's too high and it can't evaporate fast enough. So it's coming down so much because it's been stored up in the clouds for so long, and it doesn't fall down slowly. It falls down really fast and really long. And then the Earth is not warm enough to keep making it vaporize again. When too little rain falls, there is less water in streams and rivers. This can lead to droughts. And sometimes the clouds don't let the rain out all the time, and then it's too hot and there's no water in the rivers. And that's what a drought is, see? So this is an example of a flood where the water is getting so high that they have to stand on the rocks. And this is an example of drought where you can see the landline and the rocks are visible. Do you know that most of the water on our planet is salty seawater? Only a small amount is the fresh water we need to survive. Over 7 billion people live on our planet. By using less water, we can make sure that there is enough for everyone. See our planet Earth? So most of the water on the planet is salty, not fresh like the water that we drink from our bottles. We have to process that to make it fresh and clean, or not salty at least. The great big water cycle adventure never ends. Follow the arrows to see how water goes around and around. The sun warms the planet, the water vapors rise, clouds form, water droplets fall back to earth. Shh, rain. Streams and rivers carry water back to the sea. Groundwater travels slowly back to the sea, and the water is stored in oceans, ice caps, underground, and in the atmosphere. See the water cycle, guys? So the sun, then it vaporizes into the clouds, then it rains down, and then it goes into the streams, and then it happens all over again. Things to do. Use watercolors to paint your very own water cycle picture. Add arrows to show how water travels around and around. Or you can make a water cycle game. Write a different stage of the water cycle, such as water vaporizes, clouds form, and rain falls on individual squares. Roll a dice and move your counters around the board. So they're giving you some tips on what you can do to play games like the water cycle. And that's the end of our story. Wasn't that cool? So we learned about the water cycle and how when the sun warms the earth and the water rises into the clouds, and then the clouds form at the top. And when the clouds are cool and nice and full, then the clouds rain the water all the way back down to the earth, and then it flows into the rivers and the streams. Right? That's amazing. And then it happens all over again. So that's how our earth keeps getting water and snow and sleet and hail. I'm so glad you guys were able to join me for story time today. Until next time, bye friends.